You can design your own major at Stanford, but it must be in the engineering department. So if you don't want a major involving engineering, I'm sorry. Stanford doesn't have an option for humanities majors. In this video, I'm going to explain how I designed my own major at Stanford. My major is called Human-Centered Design and Engineering, which basically is a combination of design, entrepreneurship and business, and computer science. Now, quick note, design at Stanford doesn't mean like visual design, like art. It more means design thinking. So human-centered design. How do we design solutions to problems with our users' needs in mind? I'll get more into that later. Before we jump in, let me introduce myself. My name is Dylan Nellis. I'm a college admissions coach and a recent graduate of Stanford University. I make videos on the college application process, and because you're here today, I'm gonna invite you to my free masterclass on the top school admissions formula. This is going to break down how to actually get into a top school, the strategy that you need to have to craft a cohesive narrative that encapsulates your authentic self while also positioning you as a competitive applicant for these schools. So you can check that out at nextgenadmit.com/masterclass. But today, we're gonna jump into how I created this major. So let's start with why I created this major, or how I even came to the idea. So I originally, on my application for Stanford, put that my first choice major was CS plus humanities. That's so funny because that does not exist anymore. In fact, they discontinued it right before I started my freshman year at Stanford. My thought process when I applied for that major was that I wanted to combine art and technology. So the CS would be computer science, and the humanities, I would focus on art. Then once I went to Stanford in my freshman year, I thought a lot about art and technology and what that means and what do I want, and I decided I would be an art practice major. And then I think I wanted to be a symbolic systems minor, which symbolic systems combines like technology with philosophy and psychology and some other stuff. I'll include it over here because I can't quite remember. But then COVID happened. I took a gap year right after my freshman year and didn't do school. And that gave me so much time to really reflect on what I wanted and what my life was all about and where I was going. And through that process, I realized that I actually did not want to study art. Like, yes, I love art, it's something I like to do, but I cared more about solving problems in a more real, tangible way. And then I was also making this business, Next Gen Admit, and helping other students get into college. And I learned so much about what it means to run an online business that I realized that I want to study business a little bit more seriously. And I also wanted the toolkit of how do you create a solution to a problem, which is what design thinking is all about. So I decided I wanted to combine the design program at Stanford. Also, at the time that I was creating my major, Stanford did not have the design major as it is now. Before, it used to be called product design. So it was only about like tangible products, like physical products, which I was not into. I wanted to do things more on the computer. But now Stanford has a design program that allows you to have different concentrations, so you can actually pick your concentration in human-computer interaction, or the physical side of things, product design, or artificial intelligence. At the time, that wasn't an option for me, so I decided to create my own major, although I still believe that creating my own major was the best decision because it is still quite different than their design major because I took a lot of business classes. And when I say business classes, keep in mind, Stanford does not have a business major for undergraduates. They only have this thing called MS&E, which stands for Management, Science, and Engineering. And within that program, they have some businessy classes, but mostly the MS&E major is a lot of other like engineering stuff and hard math that I just did not want to do. So there was many different requirements that I did not want to do in each of the majors that I was interested in. And that's why I decided to create my own major, so I could essentially get around everything I didn't want and only do what I wanted. And isn't that what college is all about? Making your own path, making it suit you and your wants and desires to help you achieve your goals. Here's what you have to do to design your own major at Stanford. So you can just search online, individually designed major at Stanford, and then find all of their requirements, and they'll give you a template to that program sheet. This is really where you see like what your requirements are, and you have to map out to make sure that you get everything that you need in there. And I'll be going through mine now. And what's interesting is to see what it looked like when I first submitted my proposal and what it looks like now, because I made so many changes to my major, and that is okay. It is quite easy to do, even though everyone I talked to was like, oh my God, you have to do so much work. The thing is, what's really good about designing your own major is it forces you to do this work. It forces you to think about your entire education at Stanford and look at the classes and make sure that it aligns with exactly what you want. And then they also have you create a 4-year plan on top of this program sheet. So you have the actual map of here are the classes I'm going to take and when I'm going to take them and how they will all fit into my schedule. And I'll talk more about the 4-year plan later in this video. There are 2 other things that you need, and that is 1, a rationale, which is basically an essay explaining why you need this, why you must create your own major, because there's no other major that encapsulates what you feel in your heart. So you have to write that essay. And then there is a letter of support, which is where you have to go get an academic advisor to sign off on this and have them write a letter for you saying why they also think that you should design your own major. Oh, and lastly, a copy of your unofficial Stanford transcript, which you can easily download from your portal on the internet. Okay, let's get into my actual proposal now. You'll see that you have to hit a certain number of units for math, for science. You have to have a class for technology and society. You have to have 2 classes for engineering fundamentals and a certain number of units for engineering depth, and then additional courses, which can really be anything. All right, so let's start with the math. Luckily, they do take AP credits. Stanford is really, they don't take a lot of AP credits for things. They'll often make you like retake the class. Or it just like didn't really knock out any requirements for me, except for the math. I'm so thankful that I took AP Calculus in high school, because that gave me a lot of free units. I think when I first designed this, I said 8 units that it would give me. That was not true. I later found that out and was like, oh God, I have to do more math. So anyways, I had to talk about that with the woman who runs this whole program, and it only allowed me to knock off 6 units. But still, 6 units is a lot that I just got for free by taking AP Calculus in high school and placing into this class called Math 21. So Math 21 is the class that I had to take at Stanford, and that's just another calculus class, but the next level. I hated that class. It was awful, but I'm not going to go into all of that in this video. So I took Math 21. Originally, I was going to take CS 103 and Stat 60 to fulfill the other units. I ended up taking CS 109, which was Introduction to Probability for Computer Science, and MS&E 125, which was a statistics class. I'm glad that I took those classes. The statistics class was not that hard. It was like fine. And one thing I like about both CS 109 and MS&E 125 is those were on the computer, like we were coding a lot. And I wanted to do more code than like just regular math. So that worked out for me. Science. This was the hardest thing for me to choose what to do, because I didn't want to take science. I wanted to design my own major in engineering, but I just did not want to take any science, and I didn't feel like that was like super relevant. If I were to take a bunch of science classes, all I wanted was to take psychology classes, because I felt that psychology was so relevant to what I was doing and like how my mind works and what I wanted to pursue. But they don't let you do that. They only let you take 1 psychology class to be considered for this like science requirement. And so for that, I decided to take Psych 70, which is the Introduction to Social Psychology. That was an amazing class. Highly recommend. I have some other classes on here. I pretty much all stayed the same, except I changed one thing. I ended up taking Hum Bio 57, which is a class on epidemics instead of taking the adolescent development class that I was originally going to take. The only reason why I did this is I think the adolescent development class was not offered by the time that I wanted to take it, because, I designed this major when I was going to be a sophomore. Yeah, when I was a sophomore in college. And I ended up taking a lot of my science classes in my senior year. And by then it was like, oh, this class is not offered. I need to just take something else. So it was very random for me to take a class on epidemics. Everyone else was a hum bio major. I was not, but whatever, got the class credit. The next class that you need to do is a technology and society class. Now there is a whole list of approved courses for what you can take for this. And you can find that on their website as well. I decided to take COM 166, which is virtual people. That one is highly recommended by everybody. It's like the virtual reality class, where class is literally held in virtual reality. It's fun. We had our headsets and we're all standing underwater with all your classmates in this made up world, and you do readings and stuff on virtual reality. I thought it was interesting. Wasn't my favorite class, but it was cool, and got that requirement. Next was engineering fundamentals, and that also has a whole list of approved courses. And for that, I put CS 106B, which I'd already taken, because if you're gonna take computer science at Stanford, you have to take CS 106A, CS 106B, CS 107, etc., or at least those core three you tend to have to take, because they are prerequisites for a lot of other classes that you probably want to take. So I already took CS 106B. I was easy, that can be counted as an engineering fundamental. For the next course, I put engineering 145, which is supposed to be the entrepreneurship class at Stanford. Stanford is all about entrepreneurship. I did not like that class one bit. I do not feel like I learned anything. I think it was a totally watered down version of what entrepreneurship is. It could have been written by ChatGPT. I have a lot to say about this. I should save that for another video. Next, we have the engineering depth. And in that's the place where I changed a lot. As you can see here, I originally had many more CS classes, and I ended up taking a lot more MS&E classes, I guess. Yeah, so here's what happened. A design thinking class, ME 115A, which now has a different name because it's under the design department, which I will put here. ME stands for mechanical engineering, and all of the design classes used to be under the mechanical engineering department. Now they just changed all the course names, and so it's under the design department, but it's the same class. So I took this class, which is Introduction to Human Values in Design, and I hated it. I hated this class so much. I also felt like it was watered down version of what we actually needed to know, because I previously took CS 147, which is Human Computer Interaction Design, and I love that class. It is so much work, but it is so intense, and you learn so much. And this is where I really feel like I understood the design thinking process. It was just fantastic. So having already taken that course, now taking a human values in design class, that was they were trying to teach the same content, but in a much more distilled general way. So it just felt really fluffy, and I didn't learn anything, unfortunately. But because I took that class, I was oh my gosh, I actually don't really want to take a bunch more design thinking classes, because they're all kind of the same. Once you take one, you understand the process of how it works, and all these classes are just how you apply it in different ways. And sure, you learn new things here and there, but I was just this is starting to feel really repetitive, and I don't like this. So I want to change out a lot of the classes that I originally planned on taking. So I ended up taking some other classes like human-centered AI to learn a little bit more about AI. That class was also okay, not my favorite. Design 170, Visual Frontiers, oh my god, love that class. In that class, rebranded and redesigned my entire business. So Next Gen Admit is the business that I run, where I help students get into colleges and help them craft their own stories for their college applications. And that class was just phenomenal. It is all about visual design, which I love, especially coming from an art background. I really, really love how do we use color and shapes and text and format it in a way that is intuitive and that works for a user, that helps get our message across, all of those like psychology-based things I love within design, and I think they did an excellent job of teaching that class. Highly recommend Design 170. Now, a lot of these other classes that I took are in the management, science, and engineering department, which was like the businessy major, and I took all the classes that were more on the fluffy side. Like, I was not like engineering, doing math, doing hard science, doing hard coding. I wasn't, and I fully acknowledge this, and I'll admit to this, even though it is technically an engineering major. So what I ended up taking was like organizational theory, like how do businesses and organizations run, like how are they managed. Loved that class. MSNE 180, great class. I've taken innovation, creativity, and change. Didn't really like that class, thought it was pretty basic and didn't learn a ton. Organizing for good was about how can big corporations and businesses like actually do good for the world, and can they do good for the world? That was interesting. We had some nuanced discussions. I didn't love it, even though other people thought it was like the best course in the world. And then I also took MSNE 140, which was accounting. It's interesting that I took that class. My dad told me that I should take an accounting class, and I was like, okay, so I took it. As you can probably tell, I have a lot of mixed emotions about the classes I've taken at Stanford, and even though I loved that I designed my own major, I'm glad that I did it. I started to realize that the classes at Stanford weren't as amazing as I thought they would be. There's a lot of classes where I was just like, I didn't learn anything. Or I didn't really learn, or like, they didn't really give me much. And that was really fascinating for me to understand, especially I would notice this in engineering classes, like management science and engineering, or like design classes. And now there's like two interesting points I have to say about this. On one hand, yes, I wasn't doing the like super like heavy engineering part of it, like the coding, the math, the science. And those classes are absolutely very intense, and you will learn a lot. For example, CS 107, I learned so much. It was very hard, but very fulfilling as well. My other point is that what was interesting to me is I took some additional classes, as you'll see in my additional courses here, like FemGen 151, which is feminist life writing, which I learned an insane amount in that class. I think that was probably hands down the best class I have taken at Stanford. And it made me have a lot of thoughts about the humanities versus engineering, and I started to think that like the humanities classes were so much more valuable, and you actually learn a lot about the world and yourself, and it just changes your perspective on everything. And it makes me sad that people don't value the humanities as much as they do engineering, or all these people who are like, I'm gonna create a startup. So that's my whole side tangent. My point is, I got to take so many other classes at Stanford, and I'm so grateful for that. Like, I got to take that feminist class, and that did help fulfill another requirement, which was a WAYS requirement. Stanford has this whole set of general ed requirements that they have you take, where basically there's like all these different categories. So here's a list of all the categories that they have for the WAYS requirements, and some you have to take 2 classes in, some you have to take 1 class in, and this is just how Stanford does their like liberal education system. But also because I designed my own major and I had so much flexibility in my schedule, I was able to take a lot of other classes that didn't even count for anything. Like, they didn't count towards the WAYS requirements, they didn't count towards my major. It's just because I wanted to take them, and I'm so glad that I did. So I took so many art classes because, like I said at the beginning of this video, I love art. It's still very important to me. I ended up taking 6 art classes, which I found so fulfilling, and I loved that I got to take a lot of painting classes as well. I put some of them in these additional courses just because they felt very meaningful to me, and I wanted the ones that were meaningful to be on my major, just to be like, this is what I studied at Stanford. So love the flexibility of that. Now, 2 more things also that need to be in your program sheet are 1, your senior capstone, and 2, the writing in the major class. So I think pretty much every major needs to do a writing in the major requirement, and there's different classes that have that tag on it, like that are considered a writing in the major class. And so for me, the class that fulfilled that was ME 115C, which is designing your business. Like I said, it is now called something else that is under the design department, but the class still exists. It's the one where you learn how to design businesses, essentially. That, interestingly enough, was considered a writing in the major requirement, even though we didn't do a lot of writing, like, ever. We just made presentation decks. So that's that, I guess. I did get that requirement filled that way. Now, for the final capstone, this is a really interesting thing for self-design majors, is you have to figure out how you're going to make a capstone for yourself and what department you want to do it in. Because there is no department for you, because you created it yourself, you have to join another department for their capstone. So I considered doing the product design capstone, which is where you'll like work with a team and create a certain project or product with other people who are in the product design major. I decided against that for a couple reasons. One of them is that it's a 2-quarter long class, so you have to do that class in 2 different quarters, which is just tough if you want to like fit in other classes. And also I really wanted to make something that was more software based. Like I did actually want to have a technology product rather than a physical product. So I decided to do the computer science department's final capstone. So I did CS 194, which is the software project class. Now that class, I will be honest with you, I also really did not like. I think it's completely unorganized, and the people in the teams tend to not be very motivated, which is not how I work. I like to have a nice plan and work on things at an even pace in a nice schedule, so you're not super stressed at the end. But that's just what ended up happening. It was fine. I went through it. Whatever. Another option that I considered was doing an independent capstone, which I was really excited about and hopeful about because I had a whole idea of something that I could create on my own and then just work with an advisor on that. I talked to an advisor about that potential project and it ended up not working out because I think they're looking for more of like a research-based project, like answering a research question with the thing that you want to create. And mine was just like, oh, I want to make something cool that like can add to my business and that would serve a lot of my students and my clients. But they were like, it doesn't really, I think you would be better off in this other class. So that's what they said. So I ended up doing that other class. I did not end up making the idea that I originally had because the other students in my group that I ended up working with had a different idea that we went with, but that's okay. So that is the program sheet, which is the most important part of designing your own major. You also have to do a four-year plan. Like I said, it's just the same stuff. It's just like all the same classes, but put into an actual schedule with some other classes that I threw in there for other requirements. I needed like a language. I needed to take Spanish for a full year, which I did. Lastly, I will read to you my rationale, which is basically the essay that I had to submit saying like why I should have this major. Mind you, I have not read this in a lot of years, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, here is my proposal for what I said. During my leave of absence for the 2020 to 2021 school year, I launched a college consulting business with a focus on education equity. While I wasn't aware at the time, I was executing each step of the design thinking process. I worked directly with students to understand and address their needs, streamlined the college essay writing process into a series of strategic steps, and launched an online college essay course with supplemental worksheets for students to organize their own ideas. Utilizing my background in art and design, I paid close attention to my consistent color schemes, graphics, marketing materials, and web design. I hired, trained, and now manage a team of 15 employees to provide detailed feedback on college essay drafts. Not only am I fascinated by the constant problem solving, but I am proud to have impacted the lives of thousands of students. This journey has been instrumental toward discovering my passion, creating digital technologies for social good. As I have fumbled to build digital tools and grasp the complexities of entrepreneurship, I now realize exactly what is missing from my college education. I strive to become an innovator that designs human-centered solutions, cultivates equitable business practices, and possesses the technical background to bring ideas to to fruition. Each of these skill sets is necessary to reach my goals, which is why confining myself to a single field such as CS, product design, or MS&E would limit my educational needs. My individualized major, human-centered design and engineering, will develop my aptitude for each of these areas and encourage cross-disciplinary thinking. I am most excited for the project-based courses within the HCI and product design core, which will provide me with the tools to effectively need find, prototype, and ideate. I operate best with mind maps and formulated action plans, and within courses such as CS 147, CS 247, and ME 115A, I will optimize these processes to more effectively produce desired project outcomes. I am especially interested in devising projects centered around education, personal growth, and mental health. Additionally, the collaborative model of the D School will strengthen my understanding of human values, technical implementation, and design thinking as I look forward to learning from my team members' strengths. I will develop my entrepreneurial skill set through ME 115C, MS&E 175, and MS&E 188 to ensure that the solutions I create not only serve their intended market, but are also built within an organized and sustainable system. After facing challenges within my own growing company, Engineering 148 will arm me with strategies to justify business rationales and stay true to my values on a much larger scale. To be truly committed to social impact, systems themselves must be centered around diversity and inclusion. I look forward to taking CSRE 161P to learn business strategy through the lens of social equity. I am on a lifelong pursuit to innovate tools to foster individual and collective success. Why are some people more motivated than others? How can we inspire a growth mindset from a young age? How do parenting styles contribute to one's ability to communicate and build healthy relationships? The final component of my individually designed major is understanding human behavior through a psychological perspective. By taking HumBio 142 and Psych 60, I will deepen my knowledge of childhood and adolescent development, and in Psych 70 and Bio 150, I will analyze how this affects the ways in which we interact with society. In addition, these courses will enhance my design process as I will be better equipped to identify unconscious motives and hidden biases that drive decision-making. Majoring in human-centered design and engineering will maximize my Stanford education and challenge me to explore how the intersection of design, technology, psychology, and business can be leveraged for the greatest social impact. All right, now looking at this several years later, I think I did a good job. It's basically a why us essay, the type that you write to get into college, but I was already at Stanford. So I did a lot of the same techniques of giving a personal story first to show where my passions came from, and then tying in very specific classes that the school offers or the program offers, and showcasing what I will do with those classes or why it's important that I take these classes and how they align with my goals. And another thing that I did was I kept referencing a lot of lingo and terms within these departments. For example, need finding, prototyping, ideation. Those are very design thinking terms that the D School, Stanford's design school, loves to use all the time. So I made sure to use some of those words as well. And looking back on this also, I know that several of these classes I mentioned I didn't end up taking, or I took different ones, but I do feel like I achieved everything that I wrote on here. I did learn these things that I set out to learn. So that's nice to know that it was successful. And one last thing, I just wanted to say in terms of the advisors, I had to cold email these people, or at least, no, I cold emailed one of them, David Kelly. David Kelly is the founder of the D School at Stanford. He invented design thinking, which is bizarre. But yeah, apparently I heard from somebody else who designed her own major that he's really chill and would totally sign off on anyone who designs their own major. So I was like, okay. So I just sent him an email. We set up a quick Zoom meeting and he was like, sure, I'll sign off on your major. So he did that. He ended up writing the rationale. I'm sure he just had one already because he's done this for so many students. So probably an easy copy paste type of situation. For my secondary advisor, which you do need to have just sign off on it, I had James Landay. He was my professor for CS 147, which is that human computer interaction class that I loved so much. So I just talked to him and set up a meeting with him while taking that class because he sort of knew who I was through there, and he was happy to sign off on it. So there you go. That is how I designed my major. I shared so much information. I hope that was helpful. And let me know what other videos I should make, or if there's any other things that you're curious about. Happy to talk more about any of the classes I've taken. All right, have a good one. Like I said before, if you are interested in learning the strategy to get into a top school, you can visit nextgenadmit.com/masterclass. And I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one. Bye-bye.